All right, we're going to get right into it. The last video was really good. If you didn't watch that video, make sure you watch it. We got a lot of great feedback from it. And again, I'm using historical evidence, and I'm pulling up articles and conversations from the past to show you guys, okay? To just show you guys that you've been fed a bunch of lies, all right? The whole thing is a bunch of lies, all right? And this video is going to be even more explosive than the last one, so don't go anywhere. I'm going to have Harry Truman talking because, you know, I dig up all these old videos. I'm going to have Jordan Maxwell explain to you guys how the Jewish people were, or the Zionists, were looking over and over and over for a place to call home, right? And why they settled on Palestine. I'm also going to show you some rabbis who talk against the Zionists and know that they're in exile according to their scriptures, that they should not even be setting up a homeland. Okay, he's going to say that out of his own mouth. I don't make any of this stuff up. Then I'm going to show you guys how Benjamin Netanyahu out of his own mouth said Hitler was not out to kill the Jews. He was actually transporting them or moving them out of Germany. I also have a book that I'm going to show you that's going to, you know, confirm that. I'm going to show you some of the atrocities going on in Gaza and all the different stuff that the Palestinians have had to endure ever since the Balfour Agreement. Many of you probably don't even know what the Balfour Agreement is, but we're going to cover that in this video as well. So don't go anywhere. It might be a little bit long, but it's going to be worth every minute you spend watching the video today. All right, so I dug up all these old tapes for you guys. We're going to roll the first one. This is Jordan Maxwell. He's going through how the Zionists tried to set up shop in several different countries before they even settled on Palestine. That doesn't even make sense right on its surface. If that's supposed to be the Holy Land and where they've always been, it doesn't even make sense. But make sure you write down everything that he says, and then you go fact check it for yourself like I did. I don't have enough time in this video to show you all my fact checking. Please do your homework. Roll the tape.
If you go back to the dictionaries, the encyclopedias, and you will find that back as far back as 1820, in the United States in 1820, there was a guy named Mordecai Noah. And he, with other fellow Jews, wanted to set up a Zionist homeland in America. And so they picked this, the place for the new homeland back in 1820. They picked at Grand Island, New York. And that was where they began to proclaim that they were going to found the new Zionist home of the Jewish people in Grand Island, New York. Well, 1820s, that didn't work out. It fell through. That was okay because now in 1903, the British colonial secretary, Joseph Chamberlain, he suggested to Zionist Theodore Herzl, one of the main leaders of the Zionist movement. So back in 1903, British colonial secretary Joseph Chamberlain suggested to Theodore Herzl that he should put the homeland for the Jews at the Mau Plateau in Kenya, Africa. The idea was referred to by the Zionists as the Uganda program. So it was pointed out by the British to the Zionists, why don't you take your homeland for the Jews and put it in Africa, put it in Kenya, Africa. But after talking about it and thinking about it, the governments of Kenya and England and the rest and the Zionists, it all fell apart. They decided, no, forget it. They didn't need the Zionist homeland in Africa after all, so it was a bad idea. So a couple of years later, in 1905, a large group of angry and frustrated European Jews, not in the Middle East, this was in 1905, a large group of angry and frustrated European Jews formed an organization called the Jewish Territorialists. And their organization was, the aim of which was, they said they wanted to be the founders of a Jewish homeland of some kind, somewhere. They needed to establish a Jewish homeland on earth. And so it was called the Jewish Territorialist Organization, 1905, and they wanted to just find somewhere for the Jewish homeland. Well, that didn't work either. So it fell apart. So later on, in 1928, in March of 1928, in the then Soviet Union, the Soviet Union suggested that the Russian Far East would be a great place. It was a great place for the homeland of the Jews. It was very far out, away from everybody. And so the communists said to the Zionists, why don't you put your homeland here in the Soviet Union? And so the new Soviet communist idea was called the Jewish Autonomous Oblast, O-B-L-A-S-T. So this particular idea that the Soviet Union came up with in 1928, it, like the other three, it didn't go anywhere. It fell apart and nothing happened. Then in 1930, another brilliant idea was suggested by the British Zionist League. The British Zionist League in 1930 came up with a great idea that in Australia there's a place called the Kimberley region in Australia. And that would be perfect for a Jewish homeland in Australia. So large, so incredibly large and spacious. And it was called the Kimberley region in Australia. And so they decided that was where the new homeland was going to be, 1930 in the Kimberley region of Australia. But after thinking about it for a few months, the Australian government officials, they said, no, not in our backyard. That's not going to work. So that one fell apart again. Later on, shortly afterwards, the Premier of Tasmania, Robert Cosgrove, came up with a dazzling idea. He suggested that the homeland for the Jewish people should be in Port Davey, D-A-V-E-Y, Port Davey area of southwest Tasmania. Now, this is the Premier of Tasmania, Robert Cosgrove, and he said, why don't the Jews put their homeland in Port Davey in southwest Tasmania? That would be a great idea. But he died shortly after the suggestion, and everybody decided, forget it, it's just a bad idea anyway. So that didn't work either. But finally, the Zionist leaders finally had the correct idea. They finally got a good idea. The Zionist Jews that were setting up the homeland for the Jewish people, God's chosen people, well, they decided this time they were going to go to the Lord. They were going to ask the Lord to help them. And so the Lord did help them, and their homeland was set up. So it was a smart thing. After trying so many times and falling through, they finally went to the Lord, and the Lord did help them set up the state of Israel. So the Zionists went to Lord Rothschild, their Lord Philippi the Rothschild. And Rothschild, the Lord of the Jewish Zionists, he called one of his prostitutes named Lord Arthur Balfour. Everybody in England knew that Lord Arthur Balfour, one of the big politicians in England, was nothing more than a Rothschild, behind kisser, butt kisser, and that's all he's ever been. And so he was appointed by the British Israel Illuminati Masters of the World to be the one to go to the United Nations for Lord Rothschild and present this idea to the United Nations to have the Jewish homeland in the Middle East, and what we call the land of Canaan. And so they went into Canaan and just took it over. They didn't ask permission. They didn't ask anybody. They just went in with the British guns behind them, with the American military and government behind them. with the international Rothschild money and banking fraternities behind them. The Zionists went into the Middle East and just decided, we're going to take over a piece of land in the Middle East, and we're going to call it the land of Israel, and we'll say that God gave us this land, and anybody who don't like it, we'll kill them. Period. So we're tired of asking permission. And so that's why today we still have today the land of Israel, God's chosen people, which is nothing more than a Rothschild banking United States, British banking fraternities with their military behind the founding of the state of Israel. So, so much for the holiness in the Middle East, because I have been saying for years, and I'll say it again, there's nothing holy in the state of Israel or the Holy Land. There's nothing holy in the Holy Land.
And he's not kidding. Here's the document, the Balfour Agreement, that was signed in the early 1900s, way before World War II, okay? And it's right there. The British Crown and the Rothschilds put that together for you, and then they made that their homeland, and then they started coming in a little at a time, and you'll hear the next rabbi, he's going to talk next, and he even expounds or tells you what I'm about to tell you, is that when they first started showing up there, the Palestinians actually brought them into their homes. They actually welcomed them. And what happened was, after a little bit of time, they actually kicked the Palestinians out of that home and told them to get out of here, that this was their home now. Okay? This is just some of the stuff that we're dealing with. There's so much lies and deceitment going on. And I know this video is going to be hard to swallow, but just stay with me, because I'm just going to keep rocking it, keep putting the information in front of you, and it's up to you to do your homework and then, draw your own conclusions. That's what I always say here. But if the truth will kill them, let them die. All right? Roll the tape.
Wherever there is a large Jewish community, wherever there's a very religious Jewish community, even if it's not large, they will be in opposition to the existence of the Zionist state of Israel, because it is antithetical to Judaism. Zionism is a movement that started around 150 years ago. That's just really recently, relatively recently. And it's a movement of people who were totally estranged from the Jewish religion. They were nationalists. They weren't practicing the religion as a whole. And they wanted just a convenient community, a land, a nation that they should feel comfortable and proud of themselves. The Jews never attempted, even though we went through hardships, the Inquisition, the Crusades, and we suffered a lot, but we never attempted to reestablish a Jewish sovereignty, a Jewish nationhood, a Jewish kingdom, because we know it's verboten, it's forbidden, it's just not acceptable according to Judaism to have our own state. Remember, the religion is 3,000 years ago, but 2,000 years ago we were sent into exile by God. We have to be loyal citizens in every country we reside. And we're not to attempt to leave exile, because it's a godly declared exile. Jews lived with a distinctly different religion than the Muslims, but it was never a problem. In fact, it's more than that. The Muslims took in the Jews by the Inquisition, where they tried to torture Jews to convert to Christianity. It was the Muslim countries that embraced the Jews and took them in, and the Jews were able to flourish. They realized, in order to get a lot of massive support from the world, evangelistic Christians, Jews who don't know the Torah, don't know their laws, who don't practice the laws, so they knew they'll go to Palestine and they'll be able to tell everybody, oh, this is the God-given land to the Jewish people. They automatically started breaching and transgressing the laws of the Torah, not to kill and not to steal, not to oppress a people, because they wanted to make their national home in a land that was inhabited by the Palestinian people. Now, right at the beginning, when they said, oh, it's an empty land. And if anybody stood up against them, they said, because you hate the Jews and you're an anti-Semite. The vile Zionism, that they have the power of the most expensive PR and the power of AIPAC that influences, put pressure on politicians to be silent, that is what they're afraid of. The people who stand up and reveal the truth, that Judaism is a beautiful, and we live together with Muslims, and we are thankful to Muslims, and we don't want what's happening to the Palestinians. We cry with the Palestinian suffering. That is what they're afraid of. The world will wake up.
I don't know if you know this or not either, but back in the day, the Christians wouldn't even charge interest on loans to other Christians. Then the Jews said, hey, We don't have that kind of belief system, so we can charge you interest on loans. And then what happened was they were defaulting on the loans, and the Christians started losing their land, and the kings took notice to this stuff. This is why they were kicked out of every place they've ever went to. And they've taken over the banking systems. They've taken over now the media. They've taken over Hollywood. Do you even know what Hollywood is? Hollywood? That's the wood that they use for incantations for witches, okay? You can go look this stuff up. Is it any coincidence that that thing is called Hollywood, where all your television comes from? All right, but I digress. Here's Benjamin Netanyahu talking about Hitler, and listen very closely to what he says. Roll the tape.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And Haj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here.
Now, I actually got the book. It's called The Transfer Agreement, and I've read it. And the guy who actually wrote this, his family denounced him, okay? Now, there is some stuff in here, you know, kind of trying to confirm the Holocaust. But really what was going on was Hitler was moving them out. The Zionists got with him, and they said, okay, look, we're sorry for boycotting. Oh, did you guys know that? That they were actually boycotting all German goods, and even in America they were marching in the streets, and they had a very strong grip on the government here in America. So I'm going to roll this tape for you real quick, but then think about how Kennedy, okay, was trying to make AIPAC, they call it now, a foreign national like organization, and that's what really ticked him off. And some say, allegedly, that that's the reason why they snuffed him out, okay, because he was trying to register AIPAC, what they call it now, as a foreign lobbyist organization, which would really have messed him up. All right, roll the tape.
Coming out revealing secret negotiation between the Nazis and the Zionists in 1933, which allowed German Jews and their assets to go to Palestine. Rich Samuels joins us tonight with the story of the controversy behind the book and the author's struggle to write it. Rich?
Deborah, with the rise of Adolf Hitler to power in the spring of 1933, the Jews of the world were faced with a dilemma. They could raise a cry of protest, a cry few would heed, or they could make a deal with Hitler, a deal that would bring a step closer their dream of an independent Jewish state. The choice they made was difficult and agonizing. This new book describes that choice. The book is called The Transfer Agreement. This is Israel a few days ago, the season of Passover. And this is Germany 51 years ago, the blossoming of Adolf Hitler's springtime. A key factor in the vitality of today's Israel, the book's author argues, was an agreement reached in 1933 between a group of Zionists.
The great irony is that Adolf Hitler became the chief economic sponsor of the State of Israel.
Edwin Black, to fill the void left by the silence of his parents, has written this book, a dense, detailed chronicle of the early months of 1933. January 30th, 1933. Hitler becomes Germany's interim chancellor. The Third Reich has begun. But in this country, on March 4th, attention is diverted by the inauguration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
More power to you, President Roosevelt. The entire country's behind you, thrilled with hope and patriotism.
But ominous headlines tell what's already happening to the Jews of Germany. The protest of American Jews was heard almost immediately. It was based on only the sparsest of press reports, and nowhere was that protest more vocal than here in New York City.
All creeds, local and national organizations, and labor parties are joining in this gigantic demonstration passing through famous Washington Arch. Rabbi Stephen S. Wise, honorary president of the American Jewish Congress, leads the procession down Fifth Avenue on foot.
Thousands who waited hours behind police lines rush forward as the doors of Madison Square Garden are open. Jews and Gentiles join in the race for seats, and 22,000 of them get in.
I was a young kid then, you see, as a teenager. And I belonged to a Zionist youth group. And we were all summoned to go to that rally. Well, it was a very agitated crowd. Many Yiddish speaking, a few English speaking. And Rabbi Wise mounted an appeal to the Jewish people to do something to save Jewish honor.
Most of the important, well-established Jews were very angry at him, said this was sensationalism, and that if anything happened to the Jews in Germany, the blood of the Jews would be on his head.
Dr. Stephen S. Wise, rabbi of the Free Synagogue and a national leader of liberal thought, speaks in behalf of the Jews of the United States.
This is not a Jewish meeting. This is the conscience of America making itself felt.
The conscience of Nazi Germany made itself felt 5 days later. Across the Reich, Hitler's troops shut down Jewish-owned businesses for 24 hours. Within days, American Jews marched calling for the boycott of all German exports. Jews throughout Europe echoed that call, so did Jews everywhere. But a group of Zionists at the same time was quietly negotiating an agreement with the Nazis to allow the immigration of German Jews and the transfer of their assets to Palestine. That deal, reported in August 1933, was the transfer agreement. Palestine, sparsely settled by Jews at the time, was radically changed as a result.
I lived in Palestine from 1933 to 1936, and we saw every week transports of German Jews coming to settle in Palestine. And many new professions were introduced by them into the country, and they played a leading role in making Palestine then a more advanced and progressive country.
Israel is really what it is because of the foundation laid by the Eastern European group, and then the lift toward an educated and well-organized government that came with the immigration of the German Jewish group.
German Jewish settlement of Palestine was, for a time, official Nazi policy. These photos of Jewish life in Palestine, along with a lengthy text, appeared in 1934 in the Berlin paper Der Angriff. The publisher, Hitler's propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels. A Nazi Visits Palestine was the title of the multi-part series. A medal was struck by Goebbels in commemoration. On one side, the swastika. On the other, the Star of David. Hitler demanded one concession for the transfer agreement, that the call for a boycott of the Reich, raised by Jews here and elsewhere, be rejected by the Zionists. The Zionists made that concession. And so, while Nazis were marching in Germany, and while Jews were marching here, diplomacy was running a more important story. In the Mediterranean, where the dream of a nation-state for Jewish people came a step closer to reality.
The transfer agreement, it's like a real thing. So that's why they were in all the camps, that's why they were getting on the trains, they were moving them out because they were causing a big trouble for Hitler and what was going on in Germany, because he was a nationalist, kind of like Make America Great Again, right? He wanted to have the best Germany it could be. And, why also, you have to ask yourself, why during the Nuremberg trials did none of those people be held accountable? It's Operation Paperclip again, you can look this stuff up. They brought all those people back here, and the rumors have it, allegedly, that Hitler actually died in Argentina, like that whole thing was a setup. Okay, so just do your homework on that and look into it. It's all very interesting to me. Okay, now here is Harry Truman talking about when they set up Israel, okay, when he actually recognized them as a state with the UN, who he started the UN as well. Man, this is some deep, deep doo-doo. But here he is in his own words talking about what was going on with the Zionists at the time that they recognized Israel as a state after the Balfour Agreement.
I also antagonized a lot of people by recognizing the state of Israel as soon as it was formed. And it was my hope that they would have a homeland where they could operate. So when the time came for that, we set up the Israeli government in Palestine, moved some of the Arabs out. The Jews organized a government over there, and it's been a successful one ever since. They've done things over there that never have been done in that part of the world before. And while it's a small republic, it's an energetic one. Not long ago they had a fuss with Egypt, And if they hadn't been interfered with by the then President of the United States, Nasser would have been down in the Sudan where he belongs. That won't help diplomatic relations.
1949.
But don't think that decision to recognize Israel was an easy one. I had to make a compromise with the Arabs and divide Palestine. The Jews wanted to chase all the Arabs into the Tigris and Euphrates River, and the Arabs wanted to chase all the Jews into the Red Sea. And what I was trying to do was to find a homeland for the Jews and still be just with the Arabs. But when you go into a thing of that kind, the people you help most are the ones that get most angry with you. Both of them were against me on the situation, but as President of the United States, I paid no attention to them, carried out what I thought was right, and I had the support of the Congress, and I could do it, which is unusual in these days.
Could you tell us specifically that a lot of Jewish people were against you too?
Oh, well, there were a lot of Jewish people against me because they wanted the whole of Palestine. As I say, they wanted to drive all the Arabs into the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
Okay.
Floyd Anderson was one of them. We had several other people in the country, even among the Jews, the Zionists particularly, who were against anything that was to be done if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased. We had all sorts of objections to everything that was done. Something had to be done. We went ahead and done it, and had it done, and now it's working out. Eventually, I think we'll have them all satisfied. But it's going to take a great deal of time yet to get the job done.
Well, this was a little long for you guys. Please rewatch it, take your notes, share it with your friends, and just understand, man, we're really in trouble here. Okay, this is really something that you need to pay attention to. My next video, I'm going to talk about the AI data centers. It's not good, you guys. It's not good at all. But I'm going to leave you guys right now with this. It's a gal talking about some of the atrocities going on in Gaza. It's amazing to me that Christians are just sitting by and watching this happen. Okay, it's amazing to me. But a lot of that has to do with the pulpit and the brainwashing, right? Literally. So, it's not really your fault. You've been brought up this way, you believe a certain way just because it's pounded into you over and over and over. But you cannot objectively look at the information that I just laid out for you and, not see what's really going on here. Okay? Some deep stuff. That's why I don't want to talk about it anymore. But now you guys have a little more path to the truth, and so you can either jump on that path or you can stay on the one that you're already on. It really doesn't matter to me. I'm just here to present you guys with the information. All right? But share this video with your friends. It's very interesting and very eye-opening at the same time. All right? And here's the video of some of the stuff going on in Gaza.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of videos of beheaded Palestinian babies and children, Palestinian children with severed limbs, killed by Israel. And not a single corporate media outlet has reported on how Israel has systematically beheaded Palestinian children on a daily basis for the last 15 months. And yet every single one of these Western media outlets was so quick to spread the mass atrocity propaganda in order to manufacture consent for Israel's genocide by repeating a story about an incident which never took place.
We have some really disturbing new information out of Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister's spokesman just confirmed babies and toddlers were found with their heads decapitated.
I choked up earlier reading this new revelation about 40 babies being killed.
Oh my God.
And some of them being beheaded. And I was like, how can any human being do that to a baby?
So what message does that send? That mythical beheaded babies, because they were Israeli, are to be reported on when the incident never happened. But that Palestinian babies and children, when they're beheaded and their limbs are severed and they're found hanging from trees with half of their body missing, that they are not worth the coverage to report on their experience, on their premature death at the hands of Israel and the United States. Did you know that Israeli occupation forces tied explosives to the body of an 80-year-old Palestinian man who was forced to clear booby-trapped houses, and once they released him, they shot and killed him and his wife? Did you know that Israeli soldiers were captured on film raping a Palestinian hostage? And when news of this came to light, Israeli far-right politicians and soldiers and ordinary people protested outside of the facility where the soldier was being held, demanding that he be released. And in parallel, the Israeli Knesset engaged in debates on the right of Israeli soldiers to rape Palestinian hostages.
We are standing here in Washington, D.C. in front of the White House days after Israel attacked Iran. And we are here, first of all, sharing my personal experience. I visited Iran a number of times. I visited the Jewish community. We were welcomed in each and every part of the city, of the cities, of the country basically. We visited Jewish synagogues, a flourishing community, religious institutions. We met Jewish people studying Torah, studying the Jewish religion. It was so encouraging to see that beautiful community, and we hope that they stay safe. But altogether, what is happening in Iran, this bombing, this destruction, this is terrible, and we say no. All of this has to stop. But there is, in the book of Psalms, King David says regarding those wicked nations, they desire wars. This is the wicked movement of Zionism. This is the criminal state of Israel who desires wars. Why do they need the wars? They want to confuse the people. They want to distract the people from what is happening now in Gaza, this genocide, this mass murder, this starvation of little children. In addition to that, they desire war because they want to implant fear into the minds of the people that we have enemies, we have to fight the enemies. This is exactly what is happening already for decades. They are creating the enemies and then claiming that they are here for the self-defense of the Jewish people. The state of Israel is in no way a self-defense. This is defensive from day one. This is criminal from day one. This is dangerous to everyone involved. This is not even the favor of the Jewish people. In addition to all crimes committed to Palestine and now crimes to Iran, the state of Israel, the movement of Zionism, is imposing danger to the Jewish people as well, because all what is being done in our name. Unfortunately, all these crimes are being done supposedly in the name of all Jews, and the Jewish religion is being misused to justify all these crimes. This is an embarrassment to our people and a desecration to our religion. Our people are being misused as if all Jews support these crimes, and this is done deliberately in order to blame whoever criticizes it as anti-Semitic. And this is misleading and dangerous. Speaking up against these crimes, criticizing the state of Israel, is in no way anti-Semitic.